The reason that politicians care about money is because it actually gets them the kind of attention that influences people that end up going to or voting for them at the polls. And insofar as you can influence people independent of money, you have a different channel of influence. So I think that is actually absolutely the way the world is going. So I wanted to comment on the broad general frame of things, not the issue itself, which I think we all agree there is very articulately outlined, not just today, but many times in the past, but the way to approach the problem, in particular, not just the nonpartisan nature, but the sort of outsider perspective. And I want to note how iconoclastic that is, unfortunately, right now in the sort of the nonprofit advocacy complex. The natural reaction, the reflexive initial impulse for most people in most campaigns like this is let's build this massive national movement on a single campaign, centralize everything, how do we get 1 million people in petition? And it fails to recognize that the history of social movements are largely not just started from grassroots because it sounds good, because the way of distributed power by changing things from the ground up, many, many individual actions in local contexts has greater capacity to build longer-term movements that ironically have bigger centralized impact in the future. So I just wanted to know, I just think that's so important. It's not just it sounds good, it's not that it's nice if citizens own it, although there are benefits to that. But the reality is the difference between a single campaign that is difficult to achieve all sort of at a single point in time and thousands of local campaigns that are eminently achievable on a daily basis builds a kind of momentum, the kind of movement that I think is the powerful outside force that we need. And we see this at Change.org all the time, every single issue, every petition that started at a national level. When we look at it, where this has an infinitesimal chance of victory relative to the local campaigns on similar issues that are started at massive scale. And I just think that's the one most exciting thing to talk about here is how do you end up sort of running these distributed movements that win incremental steps toward a larger goal over time? And how do you do that, most importantly, in both the distributed way that recognizes the power of people that are normal everyday citizens, but also some amount of organizational oversight to aggregate them in an effective manner. And that's actually not an easy balance to make, and we've seen this happen over the past year on the site, which I'm happy to comment on, but that dynamic is going to be really important. Focused on distributed organizing with some amount of sort of lightweight organization as well. The reason that politicians care about money is because it actually gets them the kind of attention that influences people that end up going to or voting for them at the polls. And insofar as you can influence people independent of money, you have a different channel of influence. So I think that is actually absolutely the way the world is going. And stepping back, I mentioned at the beginning, I think that historically social movements have been extremely difficult to organize, right? Extremely difficult in time and in resources, and it's because of that that has limited the number of social movements that can be born, and it's because of that that the ones that have, over the past couple decades, have been centralized and often very political and impersonal. And I think what's happened now is technology has radically reduced the costs of collective action, of organizing, and by virtue of that, you have this really distributed, very personal, incremental local campaigns that open up avenues for new types of organizing that weren't previously possible. In issues that were inaccessible, it seemed like there was an impasse, like money in politics. I really think there is a new opportunity for using that organizing model in a decentralized way to disrupt traditional sources of power. I think that if you had thousands of campaigns around the country with individual citizens asking city councils or school boards or individual donors and committing large donors to not contribute money to any politician not committed to changing the influence of money in politics, to state representatives, to assemblies, you end up getting this massive groundswell of support, winning incremental campaigns every single week all across the country. And that momentum is important just for building a longer-term sort of narrative, but actually for aggregating interest and influence and media attention because of all these different victories. And we've seen this happen small amounts over the past couple of years, but at an accelerating rate. And I think that, in many ways, is how many issues will be won. And I think this is maybe one of the most important, that we'll use this as a demonstration model to actually leverage distributed organizing to win very broad change that previously wasn't possible because of technology's radical disruption. So very excited to see that.